Good Friday morning and welcome back to Commentators Corner. It is December, our first December episode as we get down towards the end of the fall semester. Tyler Reedy and Brendan Prizeman here with you with a lot to talk about as usual, but all starting with Creighton Prep basketball, which is back in a big way after last night.
Yeah, all the prep teams played last night. All of them won. Wrestling won. Swimming won.
Yep.
Even the hockey team somehow
There you
won.
go.
But
What do you mean somehow?
somehow. I mean, you're on the team, so somehow.
There's no somehow about it.
All right, if you say so. But anyway, Tyler is right. The basketball team is back and still has not lost to a team not named Bellevue West since the year 2019, if you can believe that. 1-0 against Grand Island, a really tough, really gritty win. Had to come back from a couple of deficits in the second half and even a 5-point deficit in the fourth quarter. But they were able to hold on to the win, to win 62-60 in Grand Island. Weathered, I think, 25, 27, something like that, points from Isaac Trout. 34. Never mind. Okay, so he had a great fourth quarter because he had 25 at the end of the third. So 34 points for Isaac Trout, but Prep able to weather the storm behind 17 points from senior forward Luke Jungers, including 13 in the second half. And then a breakout performance from Martell Evans. Boy, we got to talk about Martell at least a little bit on this podcast. First game as a starter, and he was everywhere for the team. 21 points, the game-tying 3, and then the game-winning layup in the last 20 or so seconds. I mean, how important is it going to be having a guy like Martell on the team in the future?
It's huge because watching the post-game interview with Lukey after the game, and I know, listening to what you saw at practice last week, the mentality of this team is really going to be, have some aggressiveness, especially from beyond the arc. Take those threes, don't pass up open looks, and just be confident in yourself. And Prep certainly was last night, but the threes weren't all falling, especially in the first half. It took a while for guys like Luke Jungers, Joey Reichel to get going from beyond the three-point line. But even when things aren't going very well from out there, you still have a guy like Martell Evans who can just ruthlessly drive it in the lane. Doesn't matter who he's going up against. And, I mean, some of his finishes last night were so athletic. It's like he's got the ball on a string as he's up in the air. And it's just unbelievable some of the things he can do. He was getting to the foul line again and again. So the offense he can provide is, I feel like, not only very explosive, but I also feel like can be more consistent than really just about anybody else on the team. So I'm really excited for the year he's going to have.
And the best part, too, is the three-pointer he hit. That's another element to his offense that makes him really, really dangerous, because the three-point shot isn't really something he had last year when he was more of a bit player coming off the bench for the team. If he's got that and he's able to attack the hoop like he was against Grand Island, he might be one of the most difficult players in the Metro to stop.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Luke Jungers, I'll say to him as well, only 4 points at halftime. Last year we knew that he could really light it up in any game, no matter the magnitude of it, but there were also some games where he could struggle. He could really be hot or cold sometimes. It certainly seemed like early on he was pretty cold, wasn't taking any shots. I don't know if he attempted a single three in that first half. And that's something Coach Lukey knows. He can be somewhat passive at times, but in the second half he really got into his groove, made a couple really big threes before Martell hit his. I mean, Prep's not keeping up with Isaac Trout and Grand Island if those don't go. So those are huge. He was getting some and ones, got a big one with about a couple minutes left. So Luke Jungers, great game as well. Casey O'Malley, he went down just before halftime with an ankle injury. Hopefully that doesn't keep him out too long, but that whole first half, I mean, he was playing some really nice defense on Isaac Trout. Active hands. He's given up 6 or 7 inches to the Virginia commit, but he was able to poke the ball away several times, contest some of those layups and hook shots for Isaac Trout in the paint. So heck of a job by O'Malley, and really a heck of a game plan from Creighton Prep. I mean, Coach Lukey knew coming in that Trout was going to score, and Prep just wanted to make sure that they did as much as they could on him, but also didn't give away too much to the supporting cast. They did a good job. Trout had 34, but nobody else had over 10. So I think the game plan went down really well.
Yeah, it was really similar to the game plan for the blowout win against Grand Island last year that we were able to call. It was really just, Trout's going to get his, but we don't think any of the other guys can really step up when they need to, so we'll just focus on Trout, and then the rest of those guys bombs away for all we care.
Yeah, exactly. The same mentality before Martell got the game-winning layup. The possession for Grand Island had the ball with 17, 15 seconds left and looked like they would get the last shot. And Prep just wanted to make sure that Trout wouldn't be the guy to get the last shot. And he had the ball in his hands, and all of a sudden 3 Junior Jays converge around him and end up with what some believe to be a controversial steal. You can go back and watch the replay if you'd like. Some are saying it should have been a foul, especially on one of the best players in the state like Trout. He should get the benefit of the doubt. But either way, it went down as a clean strip, and Prep took the other way, and the rest was history. So now you got Lincoln East coming up on Saturday, and a really good chance to build on some of that momentum.
Yeah. Should be a fun year for Prep, and I personally think that they're one of the top teams in the state once again. I think that they might be one of the toughest outs there is in the state again, and I fully expect to see them back at Pinnacle Bank Arena in the spring.
Yeah, that's for sure. So the upcoming schedule: Lincoln East in Lincoln on Saturday, and then it'll be Omaha Northwest in the home opener on Friday, December 10th, and then Saturday after that on the 11th, Millard West. Both those games at home, both those games on CPSN. And then before we get into the holiday tournament, there's Gretna on Thursday, December 16th. That's a road game. And Lincoln Southwest at home on Saturday, the 18th for Christmas in the Cage.
Yes,
so
sir.
Should be fun to watch down the stretch here. Not really down the stretch. I guess we're just starting the season. But, as we gear up for the holiday tournament and see how the team looks as you play a bunch of different opponents, it'll be really interesting to see how this team meshes because last night was absolutely encouraging. Some people say, it was close, Great Island's a borderline top 10 team, but, this is the first time they've played without that core group of guys that took them to 2 state tournaments with City, Buckley, Wiley, and Rollins, and they were able to overcome a pretty tough environment, especially going up against Trout, battle through some adversity, and get the W, so that was really great to see.
And getting those clutch, close game reps early on in the season, that's huge because if you remember, the Prep team didn't really have any close games last year, except for the ones against Bell West and Millard North, but those were so few and far between that when it came time to buckle down in the state tournament, they just couldn't do it. There were a couple bad turnovers late. I think City missed a couple of free throws that would have won it near the end of the second overtime. But this Prep team getting a tight game against a really solid opponent and showing that they can close it out, that bodes very well for their future in the state tournament.
Yeah, it absolutely does. So, with that, we'll move on to college football, which is it's been a really big thing for several reasons this week. We'll get to the coaching situations at the end of this, but start just with the teams and the games themselves. Last week, rivalry week, Thanksgiving weekend, some big games there. Nebraska football fell to 3-9 after a 28-21 loss to Iowa, in which they blew a 21-6 lead. Number 4 Cincinnati finished with a perfect regular season, 35-13 win at East Carolina. Number 1 Georgia crushed Georgia Tech as expected, 45-0. In the big game, Michigan-Ohio State, Jim Harbaugh finally got his win, 42-27 over the Buckeyes at the Big House. Hassan Haskins had 5 touchdowns.
That running game was some of the most dominant I've ever seen. They made Ohio State look bad.
Yeah, they absolutely did. UTSA finally lost, unfortunately. 45-23 to the Mean Green of North Texas. Number 3 Alabama. Boy, that was some kind of game against Auburn. 4 overtimes at Jordan-Hare. But Alabama pulled it off 24-22. Minnesota took down 14th-ranked Wisconsin 23-13 to keep them out of the Big Ten title game. And then Bedlam, what a game on Saturday night. 7th-ranked Oklahoma State took down Oklahoma at home 37-33 in a back-and-forth affair.
So many special teams plays in that game. So many. Some other important games, I think, at least. Oregon beat Oregon State 38-29 to seal their spot in the Pac-12 title game. Baylor survived Texas Tech 27-24 to seal their spot in the conference title game. Texas beat Kansas State to seal their spot as not horrible. Notre Dame survives Stanford 45-14 and keeps their slim playoff hopes alive. But now this week, this is really the do-or-die week for all these teams. It's a long season, it's a tough season, but it all comes down to this. starting tonight. Oregon's technically still not out of the playoff race, assuming that a bunch of teams ahead of them lose.
Yeah, they'll need a lot of help.
But Utah beat them earlier in the year. Utah kind of crushed them. So I don't think there's any real way that Oregon can win by enough to impress the playoff committee. That game's tonight at 7 on ABC. And then Saturday, boy, do we have a lot of big games. Baylor at Oklahoma State, a top 10 matchup in Jerry World at 11 on Saturday on ABC. I will be in Dallas for that game. That's going to be a lot of fun. I might just bring a sign that says at least I'm not an Oklahoma fan, because that program is about to fall off hard. And for Oklahoma State, I think it's winning in.
Yeah,
I really do.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. It doesn't matter what else happens. The only question I would have is
the Alabama-Georgia.
Yeah, if Alabama somehow beats Georgia, does Oklahoma State have enough to get in there? But
I
don't think that happens.
If that's the case, then the committee would be debating between Oklahoma State and Cincy.
Yeah, exactly.
After that, San Diego State, technically not out of it. They're number 19 in the country at 11-1. If they blow out Utah State, you never know. The committee could give them a good hard look. And
so you're saying there's a chance?
Oh, there's always a chance. I mean, heck, there's a chance for Houston. Anyway, as you were mentioning, the Alabama game, number 1 versus number 3, 12-0 Georgia. They've looked historically dominant all year, 12-0. None of their games have really been close except for the Clemson game, and that was a defensive masterpiece way back at the beginning of the year when we still thought Clemson was going to be good. They actually just set a record, I think, for most consecutive weeks as unanimous number 1. I think it was something like 8 weeks.
Yeah, not surprising.
Yeah, but Alabama, it's still Alabama. Bryce Young is good and a Heisman candidate. I'm not sure if he's going to win it, but he's definitely in the mix. Bama's 11-1. They just pulled out a gritty win over Auburn. So I don't know. I give the edge to Georgia, but with these two teams' history, and especially with Georgia teams' history of underperforming or not performing in the big game, I don't know. I'd like to think Georgia could win this, but it's all up in the air. And then the other game where people really want an undefeated team to win, but it might not happen, is the AAC championship game. That actually got the ABC slot at 3. That's how important that game is. Number 4, Cincinnati, unbeaten, came into South Bend earlier this year and beat the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame. I know that you're a little upset about that, but they're a good team.
Yeah.
Notre
Dame's a different team than they were now, so not a big deal.
If Cincinnati wins, they deserve to be in the playoff, but Houston's a tough opponent. They're number 21 in the nation. They're 11-1. They're really solid. I think this is going to be an exciting game. The spread right now, according to ESPN, is Cincy at 10.5. I think Houston's going to cover that.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't think they're going to win. So give me Cincy, and I think if Cincy wins that, they're automatically. And it's the same as Oklahoma State. Barring something shocking in Alabama, Georgia, it's winning in for Cincy and Oklahoma State. And then Michigan, Iowa. Harbaugh beat Ohio State. Can he get his first conference title? That is to be determined. Michigan's favored by 11, but that Iowa defense has been stifling at times this year. We saw them get a pretty nice comeback win against Nebraska. Probably shouldn't have been down to Nebraska by that much in the first place, but they've hung tight in a lot of their games. They're number 13 in the country for a reason, and they could probably hold Michigan at least a little bit close. And then the final game, the primetime ABC game. You're going to love this. Pitt versus Wake Forest on ABC.
I mean, we're finally going to get a good ACC championship game.
Yeah, it's not going to be Clemson just stomping some, 8-4 team that somehow got in. I mean, if there's a whole bunch of chaos, like if Georgia crushes Bama, Cincy loses, and Oklahoma State loses, if Pitt or Wake blows out the other, do you let one of them in?
Pitt or Wake?
Yes.
No.
You don't. You don't think there's any way they get it?
I don't. I mean, playing in the ACC, the resume's not really there. Just tell me who do you have losing again to get them to that spot?
Utah beats Oregon.
Okay.
Baylor beats Oklahoma State.
So Baylor gets in.
Yep.
Okay.
Georgia crushes Bama by like 20.
So Georgia and Baylor are in.
Mm-hmm. Houston beats Cincy.
Okay.
Iowa beats Michigan.
Okay.
And Pitt stomps Wake.
So then you would go I feel like the committee would probably go Georgia, Baylor, Notre Dame, and Ohio State.
You think Ohio State gets it?
Yeah. Alabama's been in. I don't know if you remember the.
I remember.
Yeah, the 2017 season.
That ticked a lot of people off.
Yeah, Bama lost to Auburn and
didn't play in the conference.
Missed the conference title.
It's not that they didn't win their conference title; they didn't get a chance to play for it.
Yeah.
Oof. Ooh, I'm not sure a lot of fans would be happy about that, especially given how dominant Michigan looked over Ohio State. I don't think that's going to happen. Here's the way I think the playoff is going to shake up by the end of things is Georgia, Michigan, Cincinnati, Oklahoma State.
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, as much as I want Oklahoma State to lose as a Notre Dame fan, I don't know that it'll happen. I mean, this team feels different than past years' Oklahoma State teams, and I feel like they'll get it done in the conference championship game. So, I mean, Notre Dame, I just hope that, obviously there's no way to measure this, but obviously I just hope that the committee doesn't use the head coaching situation, which we'll get to at the end of the podcast, against them, because I feel like if this team were to get into the playoff, they're going to play a lot harder now because just the way they've rallied around Marcus Freeman has been big. But anyway, it will be a fun weekend. A lot of different scenarios in play. Maybe the most fun conference championship weekend we've had in quite some time. So it should be fun to watch. Obviously, you'll be at one of those games, and if you can't head down to Lincoln to watch prep, be sure to watch some college football because it is going to be very interesting as we finish off. I guess you could call it the regular season because it's still the same week, but yeah. Getting into playoff season, but yeah, if you've got anything else you'd like to mention, we can get into NFL picks then.
Well, we're also getting close to playoffs for the NFL. Week 13 coming up. That started last night with a Dallas victory over New Orleans. We both predicted that. Good win for Dallas. Taysom Hill did not look like a good thrower of the ball. But Cowboys beat the Saints. Let's see. You want to go over last week real quick? I guess we can.
I mean, we usually just do that as we're going for. How about we switch things up? How about you pick the game first?
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Let's do this.
So, first game, Buccaneers versus Falcons. I think the Buccaneers are, once again, one of the top teams in the league, and it's the Atlanta Falcons. I've got 34-14 Tampa Bay.
Yeah, very similar scenario. Tampa Bay, that offense has proven the last couple of weeks they can beat you in a variety of ways. They beat the Giants with the passing game. They beat the Colts with Leonard Fournette, and I think against Atlanta you'll see a little bit of both.
Yeah, that one over the Colts was really good because that's one of the first real contenders they've beaten. I don't think Antonio Brown being out is going to hurt too much, but then again, having Antonio Brown on your team has not been the best if you want a distraction-free season for the past couple of years.
Yeah, 34-17 Tampa Bay.
Yeah, Cardinals-Bears. Do we know if Kyler's going to return?
I would think that he will. I'll search him up real quick, see if there's been any rumors.
Because they did have the bye week.
They're both. Kyler and Hopkins are both expected to return.
Yeah, it says Kyler's questionable right now. Even with him questionable, the spread is Arizona 7.5. I think they're covering that, no question, if Kyler comes back. And the Bears are, once again, the Bears. They probably should have fired Matt Nagy a couple weeks ago, but they were somehow able to squeak past the Lions on Thanksgiving in one of the ugliest games you'll ever see. So Nagy retains his job, and Bears fans lose even more of their sanity. But I think the Cardinals win this one pretty easily, 28-10.
Yeah, I've got 27-17. Arizona, all things considered, people have seemingly forgotten about them a little bit with the injuries to Murray and Hopkins.
They've got the best record in the league.
Yeah, exactly. Everybody's talking about Green Bay and Tampa Bay, and rightfully so, but Arizona's still holding down the fort just fine. That defense is still really good, and they can run the ball against anybody. So, yeah, Arizona's doing a good job.
Here's the thing. Green Bay's got a losing record away from Lambeau this year.
Yeah,
I looked up. They haven't lost at home, but they are not that good once they leave the friendly confines of Green Bay. If they go to a team like Arizona or a team like Tampa Bay, and maybe I'm stepping on our own toes a little bit because Green Bay's got a bye this week, but if they have to play in Tampa Bay or in Arizona, Are you really confident in him to pull that off?
We saw last year they got hammered when they went to Tampa.
Exactly.
So I don't know.
Rodgers, remember I think the last time Rodgers played in Arizona, that was the game where he threw 2 Hail Marys to like Jeff Janis to get the game to overtime, and then Larry Fitzgerald had the great catch and run, and then the little shovel pass touchdown to end it. But Packers Cardinals are always. There was another one I think where the Packers blew a 24-point lead, and that might have been 08 or something.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
Yeah, but Rodgers got strip sacked near like the end of the fourth quarter, and the Cardinals returned for a touchdown to seal it. So if he has to play the Cardinals, I'm not too confident in the Packers. On to Chargers-Bengals. This might be the game of the week, I think.
Yeah.
2 teams led by up-and-coming young quarterbacks with great high-powered offenses. Bengals, I believe, second in the AFC North right now. They're either second or tied.
They should be second with the Pittsburgh.
Oh no, yeah, they're second.
Yeah.
They're second.
Yeah.
Baltimore's 8-3, Cincy's 7-4. I think Cincy gets to 8-4.
Yeah,
I like both of these teams, but I think the home field advantage is just going to be enough. I think Herbert and Burrow are right about equal right now, but Jamar Chase I think is better than any receiver that the Chargers have.
Yeah, Keenan Allen's elite.
Allen doesn't have the upside that Chase does, though. Like Chase just has more big play explosiveness than Keenan Allen. So I've got 38-35 Bengals.
Yeah, I tell you what, I think despite the high-powered offenses, the defense is going to be the difference in this game. And right now, Cincinnati's just playing better defense. I mean, they absolutely stonewalled Pittsburgh last week. They had no problem with Vegas 2 weeks ago.
You picked Pittsburgh last week.
I did pick Pittsburgh last week. That's a bad decision. Thank goodness the 49ers saved my week. But yeah, Cincinnati's playing great defense. Chargers have been taken to town a little bit by Denver and Pittsburgh the last 2 weeks. So, I mean, those are 2 pretty easy data points. Cincinnati 27-24.
Yeah. Up next, speaking of the 49ers, the team that they beat last week is a team whose quarterback doesn't know which lineman he's supposed to take the snap from, and Kirk Cousins, but luckily the Vikings are playing the only team more incompetent in late game situations than them, the 0-10-1 Detroit Lions. Are they going to set even more records for futility on the 13-year mark of them going 0-16, becoming the first NFL team to do that? Probably. Vikings get a much-needed win and at the very least stay in the playoff race. Currently, looking at the standings, if the ESPN standing page will not crap out on me, the Vikings are still well within reach. I don't think they should be a playoff team necessarily, but I definitely think they could be there. A win here will get them to 6-6. I think they get that win, 24-7.
Yeah, the offense, even without Dalvin Cook, should be just fine. The last 2 years, Minnesota has gone to Detroit. They've won and put up a lot of points. I'll have to double-check the final scores. You knew that yourself, but, I mean, Minnesota has had no problem with the offense, even without some key players at times when they go to the Motor City. I think the same thing will ring true. Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen will probably have some pretty nice days if you play them in fantasy. 30-17, Minnesota.
Yeah. Up next, Dolphins and Giants, another team with a below 500 record that could still somehow, potentially, maybe, don't look now, get a playoff seed. And that, of course, is the Miami Dolphins.
Wow.
No, hear me out.
I mean, we thought so coming into the season, but not a quarter of the way through.
I mean, Tua has really done a great job at writing out all the struggles that he had earlier, but Chargers right now are the 7th seed. They're only 6-5. The AFC is wide open, as is the NFC this year. Both conferences are really wide open, and the Dolphins get the Giants at home. They could easily get to 6-7. I've got 24-13 Dolphins. Tua Tagovailoa is finally starting to play like he was advertised at the beginning of the year, and that should be enough to get them a win.
Yeah, and the other part of Miami that's playing as they were advertised is the defense of theirs. We saw last year, especially at home, Miami's defense could really play well against just about anybody. And against Carolina last week with the whole Cam Newton is back narrative and Christian McCaffrey being on the field. Woo, did they make them look bad. Miami's defense did one heck of a job with Cam and company, and I think that should continue against a very futile New York Giants offense, and the Dolphins win at 23-17.
Yeah, I think that sounds good. Next up, Eagles-Jets. Eagles coming off a inexplicable, just very, very stupid loss to the New York Football Giants somehow, but now they get to deal with the New York Football, with football in air quotes, Jets. Guess what, folks? It's the Jets. 19-7 Philly.
Oof, that's an ugly game.
It's Philly versus the Jets.
I mean, Philadelphia can be so up and down. One day they'll be able to run the ball down anybody's throat, like we saw against Detroit, like we saw against New Orleans, but then...
Neither of the teams you're mentioning are good.
Well, the Giants aren't good either, and then look what they did last week. So you just don't know what you're going to get from Philadelphia. I do think they'll bounce back a little bit, but it's tough to tell with them anymore. I've got 28-13.
Yeah.
Eagles win.
Colts-Texans. The Colts are also a definite playoff team. That game against the Buccaneers proved where their ceiling is. They are, at their best, I think one of the best teams in the league, given just their top talent and if they can execute well. Carson Wentz has been having a very underrated season. He's kind of back to where he was in Philadelphia that year that he was the MVP favorite for a while. Jonathan Taylor is one of the best running backs in the league at this point. And they get to go up against the 2-9 Houston Texans. So, yeah, 28-6.
Yeah, Indianapolis, even against Tampa Bay last week, kept it competitive. So, they're a contender. And Jonathan Taylor, really hot right now, coming off the Buffalo game. Tampa Bay held him down just a little bit, but he still got his rushing touchdown, came close to 100 yards. I do think he'll break the 100-yard mark and score multiple touchdowns this week, and Indianapolis will roll 31-17.
Yep. Next up, the Washington football team versus the Las Vegas Raiders. Football team coming off a gritty defensive win where they heavily won the time possession battle against Seattle. The Raiders coming off an overtime victory over the Dallas Cowboys in a game marred by, I believe, over 280 total penalty yards. I could be wrong, but just off the top of my head, there were, I think, 25 or so penalty flags thrown in that game. So, yeah, that was a game. Personally, I don't think we should count out the football team just yet.
Yeah?
I don't. Their offense is really good at not turning the ball over, and their defense is really good at getting stops. I've got 16-10 football team.
16-10?
Yes, sir.
Goodness gracious.
Their last game was 17-15.
It's also Russell Wilson's offense. I think Derek Carr can do a little bit more than Russell Wilson can right now. But yeah, I am in agreement. Washington will get it done. They're playing that gritty brand of football you talked about. It's that gritty brand of football that got them into the postseason last year and could very well do the trick again this year. So, 26-24, football team over the Raiders.
Ooh, that's not worse than 16-10?
What do you mean?
How's an NFL team going to get to 26? You're going to kick. You're going to get.
Well, no, I don't mind the fact that you're saying 16. I'm just shocked that you went that low scoring with it.
Well, it's the key to the football team is their offense has these long, methodical drives, and then the defense just gets stops. I think their last drive against Seattle was something like 7 minutes long. So they could definitely win the time of possession battle and force teams to play their game. And their game is that low-scoring type deal. Two other teams that had some low-scoring weeks last week, the Ravens and the Steelers. The Ravens played a clunker of a game. 4 interceptions for MVP candidate Lamar Jackson.
Past MVP candidate
Current
Lamar Jackson.
MVP candidate Lamar Jackson for the division-leading Baltimore Ravens. Squeaked by the Browns 16-10. Neither of those teams looked good in that game. I think that's just a side effect of two really solid defenses coming in and imposing their will. Meanwhile, the Steelers have 41-10 to the Cincinnati Bengals. So, yeah. I think my key with looking at these teams' game from last week is that the Steelers did not look competitive at all. They didn't look like they belonged on the same field as the Bengals, to be perfectly honest. And Lamar threw 4 picks, but the Ravens still won. I've got 31-20 Baltimore.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I've learned my lesson with picking games Pittsburgh this year that I just shouldn't go with the the underdog, and I think the same thing rings true here. Pittsburgh just didn't look like they could play that smash mouth type of AFC North football anymore. And Joe Mixon ran for 160, 170 yards last week and a couple scores. So, yeah, Pittsburgh, I don't know that they'll be ready for Baltimore. I do think it'll be close as it always is between those two teams, but it's going to be Baltimore all the way, 23-20.
I agree. Next up is another division rivalry, the 49ers versus the Seahawks. We already talked about it a little bit, but there is something very, very bad going on in Seattle right now. They've fallen to, I believe, 3-9. I could be wrong. Maybe it's only 3-8, but they are almost certainly going to have a losing record for the first time since they drafted Russell Wilson. Not basically out of the playoff hunt already. Yeah, they're 3-8 right now. I mean, their offense has just looked awful in the past 2 weeks. I cannot emphasize that enough. And the 49ers are not a good team, but they are going to look like one against Seattle. 28-14, San Fran.
I think the 49ers aren't a bad team.
They're not horrible.
Yeah, that offense is playable when you have Deebo Samuel and George Kittle and the emerging Elijah Mitchell. And the defense still has some pieces like Nick Bosa, Fred Warner. So
yeah, but
they can
playable,
make some noise.
Playable isn't the type of adjective I want to use to describe a potential playoff team.
Yeah, I think the upside is there. I just don't want to go too far just yet. But, yeah, 49ers are pretty good. Seattle is really bad. 26-20, 49ers win.
26-20?
Yes.
Seattle's not going to score 20.
How many did they score last week?
15.
Okay, that's close enough.
No, it's not.
It's almost one more field goal.
I have them at 14. They're not that good. And you just talked about the 49ers defense, man. Anyway,
it's still on the road.
On to the next game. Sunday night, another division battle.
Hold on, you missed Jaguars-Rams.
What?
You missed the Jaguars-Rams game.
Rams? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Rams.
pretty easy. 30-13, LA.
Yeah, I'm not even going to pick a score prediction, but yeah, Jaguars, Rams. That's it. That's all I'm going to say. I don't think I should have to say too much more than that. Next up, a division rivalry on Sunday night. This is actually for the AFC West lead. The Denver Broncos head to Kansas City. Here's what I wrote for this one. The Overlords have returned. Note, I hate myself. 34-23 Kansas City.
34.
I can't believe I'm doing this, but I'm picking the Chiefs. I think that they're back.
I mean, I'd go with a score like that if this was a 12 o'clock game, but the Chiefs have not been good on Sunday Night Football at home in recent years. They almost lost to Denver. They played a bad football game against the Broncos. That was the Tyreek Hill crazy catch that they didn't look at game last year, and it was a very close, low-scoring game. And I think it'll be something similar because, honestly, the story right now with the Chiefs is that defense. It's a lot like the 2019 season, the year they won the Super Bowl. The defense really led them back into things. Offense didn't have to do too much. And I think it'll be pretty similar Sunday night. Kansas City wins it 24-17 and takes that division lead.
Yep. And another battle for the division lead on Monday night. For this one, I wrote a very similar note. Patriots versus Bills. The Overlords have returned. New England Patriots
You're doing it.
are
Okay.
going to beat the Buffalo Bills and take the division lead. They're back. Mac Jones for Rookie of the Year. Let's do this. 24-14 Patriots.
Well, this is big because now we know for sure that we're not going to be tied at the end of this week. I am going to roll with Buffalo.
Mistake.
I think the last week for them was a much-needed get-right week down in New Orleans. I think Josh Allen is going to be just fine, even though he had a couple of rough ones against Jacksonville and Indianapolis. And
Neither of those teams have the defense anywhere close to what the Patriots do.
Indianapolis is all right.
They gave up 38 to Tampa Bay last week.
I think here's the deal with this one. I don't think there's any doubt that New England beats Buffalo at home, but I just don't see the Patriots sweeping the series. That's another aspect of it. Okay.
I do.
I don't know. I think Buffalo's too good to get swept by them.
I do not. I mean, like, looking at the they're only 3-2 at home.
Yeah.
I mean, like, let's look at who they lost to. They got crushed by Indy, 41-15. They lost to Jacksonville, Tyler. Jacksonville. They lost to Tennessee at home. Let's see.
New England lost to Miami and New Orleans.
Miami's solid, and New Orleans had Jameis Winston. Buffalo lost to Pittsburgh.
In week 1, how much of a data point is week 1?
Okay.
23-20 Buffalo.
Is 2 weeks ago a good data point when they lost 41-15 to the Colts?
Yes, but they bounced back last week.
It's the Saints without Winston. They started Trevor freaking Simeon, dude. That's not a bounce back week. That's a bye week.
Okay, well, the offense was good.
It's the Saints.
Whatever. 23-20 Buffalo. I stand by it.
You're going to be so wrong.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, that's it for the NFL. A hotly contested week. We will not be tied at the end of next week. And,
actually, we could.
Oh, if there's a tie in the actual games. Gosh,
that's the goal.
Please
That's
no.
the goal.
No,
That's
no.
the goal. We're going to be tied till the sun explodes.
All right. Some quick recaps with some other things before we get to what is happening. College basketball. Some big games. Gonzaga beat UCLA but lost to Duke. And then Duke lost to Ohio State on Tuesday, 71-66. Dayton beat Kansas, who was 4th ranked at the time, in a buzzer beater last Friday. And then the Big Ten won the Big Ten ACC Challenge, 8-6. Major League Baseball at the moment is in a lockout. Yep, there's a lockout as the collective bargaining agreement expired on Wednesday night. There were some big free agent signings before that, though. The Texas Rangers really improved, getting Corey Seager and Marcus Semien for the middle of their infield. The New York Mets picked up Max Scherzer, Sterling Marte, and Mark Hanna. Seattle got Robbie Ray. I know the Cubs just got Marcus Stroman as they try to escalate their rebuild a little bit. Javi Baez just went to Detroit as they feel like they're coming out of their rebuild, and I can't help but agree with them with the kind of pitching they have already and some of the prospects as well. I'm trying to think if I missed anything. Minnesota extended Byron Buxton. But yeah, that's about it for the most part. But yeah, definitely some big moves.
Yeah, and then real quick, I've got some NBA stuff. The Phoenix Suns, after beating the Warriors on national television, set a franchise record with their 18th straight victory last night. They are currently the number 1 team in the league at 19-3. We had an NBA record set last night as well. Oklahoma City lost to the Memphis Grizzlies by a grand total of 73 points. That's one of the worst games you're ever going to see a team play. Other than that, the Chicago Bulls went into Madison Square Garden and beat the New York Knicks to firmly take hold of the number 2 seed in the East, just a game behind the Brooklyn Nets. The Milwaukee Bucks were winners of 8 straight up until last night, a loss to the Raptors. They're currently the 4 seed. And then right now in the West, it's a 2-horse race between Phoenix and Golden State. Phoenix obviously has won 18 straight. Golden State's last loss is to that Phoenix team. After that, it's just a mess right now in the West. The number 4 team right now, the Dallas Mavericks, is just 1.5 games ahead of the number 10 team. So there is a whole bunch of stuff in the middle. None of those 4 through 10 teams, none of them is better than 11-9. None of them's worse than 10-11. And you got a similar thing in the East. The 6 seed and the 11 seed are only a game apart, with the Cleveland Cavaliers at 12-10, Philadelphia 76ers at 11-11. So there's a lot of room for those teams in the middle of the NBA to move up. But now I think it's time to get to everyone's favorite part of the segment. I know you're going to love to talk about this. What is happening? And what is happening is the coaches are moving a lot.
Yeah.
Lots of coaches. So I was just scrolling back through our text because I know we talked about this quite a bit. You were distraught.
For a little bit.
For a while.
I needed a couple hours to come to my senses.
Let's see. So it was Monday night. It was. Boy, we had a lot of texts. It was just back and forth. We talked about the playoff a little on Saturday night. You said, go away, Oklahoma State. You're not supposed to be good. So let's see. Monday, 6:54, I sent a text to you simply labeled Brian Kelly. You responded with, what the heck? They're going to hire him? I hope Bama drops 80 on him next year. And then, you're the winningest coach in school history, have 5 straight 10-win seasons, might, but probably won't. Probably won't added there. make the playoff for the third time in 4 years and have a massive recruiting class coming in. How do you just walk out on that?
It's all about the money.
Yeah, just a notice to the fans, I am leaving out the expletive because there were several, and I go, have we considered that Brian Kelly is an idiot?
All right, so enough of the text here before you get us fired. But anyway, so yeah, if you missed it, Brian Kelly walked out in the middle of Notre Dame's playoff push. The regular season is done for Notre Dame, obviously not playing a conference championship, but they do still need to wait and see if they get into the playoff. Obviously, they're in New Year's Six Bowl no matter what, but Brian Kelly just walked out, took the job at LSU. He'll be getting about $10 million a year for, I think it's either 9 or 10 years down there. Either way, I don't
10 years, $95 million.
Yeah, 10 years, $95 million. So he left, and then he tried to get Marcus Freeman, the defensive coordinator, Tommy Rees, the offensive coordinator.
Both said no.
Matt Bayless, the player development coach. He tried to get all of them down there with him and just completely uproot the program in Notre Dame. And like you said, they all said no. They turned down the money to stay at Notre Dame. And now, as of this morning, Marcus Freeman is officially the new head coach of the Fighting Irish. And, I mean, at first, I was kind of shocked about it. I was upset. I thought, oh, my gosh, what's going to happen? You know, are we going to get Oklahoma? Because I'll mention Lincoln Riley left Oklahoma for USC, and now Oklahoma's losing all the recruits. But I think Notre Dame only lost one of them, and now they're in a position where you have.
Now you're feeling better than you were.
Absolutely, because
when Brian Kelly was still the coach.
Yeah, because if you don't know Marcus Freeman, the players absolutely love him.
And they love Rees, too.
They love Rees, too. Rees is one of the best offensive minds in college football, and Freeman is really an extremely charismatic guy. If you saw any of the Notre Dame players on social media, they were just absolutely supportive of Marcus Freeman sticking around, taking a head coach spot. They're excited to play for him, and then
they were campaigning for him.
Yeah, and then he's going to be able to recruit pretty well, I'm sure, as well, just knowing how charismatic he is. So yeah, I think Notre Dame's in a great place, especially in short term, if they can get into the playoff, because this team's really fired up now.
A team that is not in a good place, and fingers crossed will not be for several years to come, is the Oklahoma Sooners. You mentioned that a little bit, but it was really shocking because of how fast it happened. It was, I believe, a Saturday to Sunday turnaround, I think. Yeah. So Saturday night, we mentioned this earlier, Oklahoma State beats Oklahoma in a crazy, tight Bedlam game, 37-33. After the game, Lincoln Riley is asked about the vacancy at LSU. He says, "I'm not going to be the next head football coach at LSU." He was absolutely correct. Next morning, news broke that Lincoln Riley was heading to sunny Los Angeles to take the job at the head coach at the University of Southern California. And almost immediately, by the end of the day for sure, Oklahoma had lost about 5 recruits from Southern California. It would have been bad if it was that. It wasn't. Several of Riley's coordinators are also coming with him. And the ones that are staying were apparently recruiting for him for USC for a good percentage of this season. Like, from what I've been hearing, it seems to me like the Riley to USC thing was a thing far before Bedlam, perhaps as early as Oklahoma's first loss to, I believe it was Baylor?
Yeah, it was Baylor.
Yeah, potentially as far back as that. So now Oklahoma, basically all of Oklahoma's recruits from Southern California, one of the biggest hotbeds for football recruits ever, is gutted completely. They're moving to the premier conference for football in a year or so. They don't have that fancy coach that would attract the great quarterbacks that you need to win in the SEC now. They're probably not going to get a lot of guys from Texas because, there's better options elsewhere, like, in Austin or heck, even...
I gotta see it to believe it.
Maybe. Or where's Oklahoma State play?
Stillwater.
Like, arguably, Oklahoma State is a better place for a 5-star recruit to go right now than Oklahoma is. Because Norman is, I think, right now in chaos. I think they're scrambling to find a new coach. We know that Fickle is staying at Cincinnati, at least for the time being. And I doubt Iowa State's coach, Matt Campbell, is planning on leaving the Cyclones anytime soon. So that's the 2 biggest names left in the coaching market gone, because they're not going anywhere. Riley obviously left. Kelly wasn't really a name, but they didn't get him. Billy Napier of Louisiana, who was really good, is going to Florida already. So Oklahoma is going to be in a really bad place unless they figure something out really, really soon.
Yeah, now they've got to join the SEC, as you said. So
Can't wait for Texas to consistently beat them again. Let's go.
If you say so.
I do.
All right, so that's about it for this week's episode number 15. For Brendan Preisman, Tyler Reedy saying, have a great rest of your Friday. Enjoy your weekend. Watch some prep basketball. Watch some college football. Watch some NFL. Just watch some sports. There's plenty of it out there for you.
Not baseball, though.
Not baseball. There will not be any baseball for you for quite some time. Hopefully we do not miss any games come February and March. So fingers crossed for that. But for the time being, let's just enjoy some football, some basketball, some hockey, some every winter sport, because we've got all of it. And we'll still be here every week up until Christmas break to cover it for you. So that's about it for this week. See you next time, and have a great weekend.